Inquisition is here.
Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you folks, I have a brand new Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory video, because I'm actually going to be taking some time today and actually discussing Space Marine 1 and maybe how we could use its influences and stories to create our own campaign, if you will. And essentially this video is brought on because of the Mastercrafted edition that's soon going to be released. At the time I'm recording this, it will probably be released by the time this video goes live on YouTube. But let's do a quick, kind of gloss over of the main story. That way I can get into how I would actually use this as a campaign for Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory. Now the first thing is the setting starts on the planet of Greya. It's a desert forge world, and what happens during the story is there's essentially an orc invasion, and basically the 203rd Cadian as well as PDF forces are trying to fight off the orcs, but essentially they're basically being beaten back slowly but surely. And during the process of the opening parts of the opening cutscene of the story, if you will, they actually asked to do an exterminatus, which they were denied. So no nuking the site from orbit, unfortunately. And that is because, as I said a bit ago, the planet itself is a forge world, particularly Titans. So it is an Adeptus Mechanicus planet with Titans on it, and they have a Titan manufactorium. So essentially the Ultramarines is called in to deal with the situation. Honestly, never guessed that was coming, just because of the cover of the game. And, well, the Ultramarines are a bit overshown within Warhammer 40k, but we won't go there. Now, during the process of the story, Titus and his group, after they've landed planetside and fought the orcs for a bit, meets Inquisitor Drogon of the Ordo Xenos. And essentially he tells Captain Titus about a power source that can activate a weapon on the planet. This weapon system is the Psychic Scourge. And essentially Inquisitor Drogon's study shows that if they activate the Psychic Scourge, it will kill the orcs on the planet. With that being said, well, it was a trap. See, Drogon the whole time was a puppet of Namaroth, and basically when they activate the Psychic Scourge, good Lord, English sometimes. Basically that opens up a webway. Basically a gate, a chaos gate, if you will, and it allows chaos forces, particularly from, Namaroth himself, and then, of course, his warband, the Chosen of Namaroth, invade the planet. Now, it turns into pretty much an absolute slobber knocker. You got orcs fighting in both, firing in both directions. You got Space Marines firing in both directions. You got Chaos firing off in both directions. At least up until Captain Titus actually kills the Orc war boss. But up until that point, essentially the Orcs were not out of the fight yet. Once Captain Titus kills the Orc war boss, well, essentially that puts them out of the fight. And as the story progresses, Captain Titus actually fights his way through Namaroth's forces and essentially saves the day. Or at least so it would seem like it. Until Inquisitor Thorax of the Ordo Hereticus actually steps in and basically buys into Leandros' story. Something about being tainted by chaos. very flimsy evidence. And essentially, we know what happens here from this point forward. Essentially, Captain Titus becomes a Black Shield, and he reappears again in Space Marine 2. Although, so does Leandros, unfortunately. Now, there's a couple things I want to point out, though, for using this as a Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory campaign. One thing is I feel that the war would essentially continue on. There would still be Chaos forces on the planet. There would still be Orc forces on the planet. Planets are big, and essentially we realistically, 8, 10, maybe 12-hour campaign, we realistically don't see everything, if you will. So there's going to be fighting going on in other parts of the world. It's not all going to be concentrated in one area. That's just typical Warhammer 40k for you. Now, one thing I would personally, would feature a bit more would be the Adeptus Mechanicus, because they really were not featured that much within Space Marine itself. I mean, they were more or less kind of a back burner character. I mean, the game is Space Marine, so they're not per se really important. But realistically, they should have been a little bit more important than they were, just because of the Titans. The Titan does come and play a little bit during the campaign, things of that nature. Next thing I want to point out, too, is Space Marine reinforcements. When Inquisitor Thorax actually lands on the planet, we actually see him with a guard group of Black Templars. Now, personally, I want to argue that this doesn't make sense, because there's really no love lost between the Black Templars and the Inquisition. But okay, we'll go with it. There will be other Space Marine reinforcement chapters, the Black Templars being one of them. For some odd reason, too, I think I do remember also seeing salamanders in the game. There was like a bridge assault during the campaign, and if I remember correctly, salamanders was also a part of that, as well as Ultramarines and Black Templars. Now, the next thing to point out here is Graia is actually within the Cementum Tempestus. English. Well, it's not even really English. It's kind of like a wannabe Roman, Greco, pseudo-Latin. I don't want to get into it. But in this segmentum, actually, there's two pretty famous Imperial Guard regiments. And one of those is the Death Corps of Krieg, and the other one is the Talarns. And I would actually involve both of them, kind of expand the campaign out some more, and also feature both the Death Corps of Krieg and the Talarns, as well as some Cadian reinforcements, because, well, Cadians seem to be part of every single war when it comes to Warhammer 40k. Now, when it comes to my players themselves, I'm kind of actually would be at a three-way split here on which direction to really go. So I'm going to share all three here with you. Now, personally, I would actually focus on Inquisitional forces. Now, we'll start off with the first one, and that's just the fact that the Orcs are tough. They're going to regroup, or they're going to try to regroup. There's going to be some infighting, and essentially a new war boss is going to rise to power if essentially they're kind of let go to roam free. So essentially, this is where you get the Ordo Xenos, who I actually just said a bit ago, Inquisitor Drogon was from the Ordo Xenos. You have a small group of Death Watch. That's essentially, they're fighting the Orcs. Maybe they've been fighting the Orcs during the whole invasion, using guerrilla tactics and things of that nature to actually slow the Orcs down, slow their progression, and basically deal small crippling blows little by little. And then essentially, after the Chaos Invasion, part of Space Marine, or the story, if you will, the Death Watch team would be more worried about mopping the Orcs up and trying to do as much damage as they can to prevent essentially a new war boss from rising to power. So that kind of continues the story on past what we see in Space Marine. And essentially, that's actually the goal for all these ideas. Now, the next one, too, is actually inspired by the fact that we do see Chaos Cultists. And essentially, for me, that is a storyline for the Ordo Hereticus, who I also said was just involved in the whole campaign a little bit ago. Obviously, essentially, my thought is you just have a team of Inquisitors trying to locate the Chaos Cultist leaders and just basically trying to snuff them out little by little just to get rid of them. Because, well, the Inquisition can't let Chaos run free. Now, the next one I want to discuss is because the fact that the game actually featured Chaos Demons, particularly Bloodletters, but this would be a good opportunity to also use Fleshhounds. And that's essentially the idea of rumors of a Chaos Gate somewhere else located on the planet. And with those rumors being said, essentially the possibility of summoning a Bloodthirster or maybe a Demon Prince, whatever. So the Grey Knights, because the planet is already tainted by Chaos, decides to get involved. And essentially you have a small group of Chaos Knights that's hunting down the last of the Chaos Space Marines, as well as any cultists, and primarily any demons that so happen to be left over from the taint of Chaos. Now, there's actually a bonus round here because I said there was 3, and I kind of gave you one for each Inquisitional force, but why not feature all 3? Now, the thing is your players are going to pick one of them. They're either going to be the Ordo Malice, which would make them the Grey Knights. They're going to be maybe just an Inquisition team, and that essentially would be the Ordo Hereticus, or they would be Death Watch, which would be the Ordo Xenos. But essentially, at some point or another, their stories should actually cross paths. So you should also feature the other Inquisitional elements that is on the planet itself, because, well, the planet is in absolute chaos, and y'all need to rip and tear until it is done. Anyway, folks, I'm actually going to wrap up today's video at that. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourselves a wonderful day.
Say we take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.